This is a live presentation of the Titan Upload Network. The Power Hour is on the air, live streaming on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. I'm your host, Michael Bishop, and thank you for joining us on this Sunday evening. And I'm sure a lot of you are asking, well, Mike, why are you doing a show on Sunday? Well, it's really because we've got a doubleheader on Monday Night Football, and I didn't want to try and interfere with that, especially with one of those games being the Titans at the Bills. So it just seemed like the better option to just go ahead and do a show on Sunday. Everything's fresh. All the information's fresh, so it just makes for an easier day. So please forgive me if you had plans to watch the show on Monday. Just trying to make it easier on y'all. That's all on me, so no big deal. We'll just make it a good show regardless. Our guest, Chris from Titans and Truth, is running a little late. He had some errands to run today, but he will join us on the show a little bit later. I promise. He's just trying to get through traffic and get home, so when he gets here, we'll get him on the show as soon as possible. So hopefully I'm coming in loud and clear for y'all. I figured I was having some mic trouble this morning, but I'll try and get that sorted out. But once again, I'm Michael Bishop of the Power, and please welcome to the Power Hour. And as we are saying, let's go ahead and get ready for our top news of the day, and there's so much to get through it. We've got a lot of news piling on, especially with some of the late scores and the late games coming on. If I get any information on that, we'll definitely make sure that we pass that along to you, just to make sure that you're getting that as well if you're joining us on the show. So jumping into it right now, let's hit our top news. Let's get going. I'm Michael Bishop, and you're watching the Power Hour. And to start out with the first bit of news today, of course, would be Tom Brady, where it was breaking news earlier this morning that Brady will, in fact, not be available on Wednesdays. He will take that as a personal day and basically just kind of use it as just a rest and relaxation day for somebody that's already 45. It already kind of makes sense. So not trying to make too much of a big issue out of that, but still, I'm sure everyone has their opinion on that. But honestly, guy's 45. He knows what he's doing. He knows the playbook. The Bucs know what they're running. So, I mean, there's not a lot to really talk about other than that. But jumping into it so fast, my apologies. I didn't get to go to comments. So my apologies on that. So let's go and do that real quick. Mom, as always, joining us on the show. Good seeing you. Love you, mean it. Our buddy Al Pierce, Tighten Up has no greater meeting than tomorrow night. Go Titans, kick Buffalo Bills' tail. And now we hope that's what's going to happen. It's definitely going to be a smash mouth kind of game, a smash mouth kind of atmosphere. So we're going to make sure that we get this done and done proper. Shouting out to Chris from Mom once again. Our buddy Lou Man's in the house. Lou Man's always bringing some good insight. Hello, Big Mike, Power Peeps and Power Baby, and Big Mike's mom. Lou Man, always good seeing you. Always great having you on the show. And, of course, Mom shouting out Lou Man. All right. Got to your comments. Definitely want to make sure I keep doing that, especially with so much going on, guys. It's important that I make sure and that I am getting your comments as quickly as possible. But as I said, a lot of things going on. I want to make sure I get some scores that are final right now. As appears, the Broncos have beaten the Texans 16-9 in the final. And it appears that the Raiders and the Cardinals have tied. So we will be going to overtime in that, and we'll keep an eye open for that for you. That definitely is going to be an interesting game as that unfolds. And also finalized just a few minutes ago, the Cowboys and the Bengals. Cowboys come up with the upset of the last-minute field goal, 20-17. So that game is final as well. But as I have said, and as Lou Man says, we have an overtime game. Cardinals and the Raiders are tied at 23, and we'll keep you up to date with what's going on and get you the final score whenever possible. But getting back to the game at hand, while Tom Brady was the big piece of the news in the news cycle, the game itself definitely was a big piece of news at itself. And you look at what the Bucs did, and from the terms of just getting 5 turnovers on defense, they frustrated Jameis Winston early and often. Winston having probably one of the worst games of his comeback career, running about 25 for 40 attempts, 236, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions, and was sacked 6 times. So Tampa Bay's defense really is going to be interesting watching as the season unfolds. I think they still have a good core. I think eventually they're going to continue to play at a high level. So I'm not too surprised at what they're doing. I'm not too surprised that it seems that they're continuing to find ways to win, especially when Tom Brady doesn't come out and have to throw 200 or 300-yard games. But I mean, this one was just aggressive throughout the entire game. It was just one of those games where these teams do not like each other. It's almost a rivalry renewed. And I really, really enjoy the fact that this one was just so much fighting, so much anger between these two teams. And that's just old school NFL football, and I love it. And that was just really the best part of this. So I have no doubt that the next matchup with these two teams, it's going to be just as intense, especially when that game being in Tampa Bay. But of course, Tampa Bay squeezing out the win with a big defensive momentum and the big defensive win, 5 turnovers, 20-10, the final score. And moving to a bit of sadder news today, and it has been officially been declared by Adam Schefter, via Adam Schefter on his report, that Trey Lance will miss the rest of the season after being determined that he will have season-ending ankle surgery. And it's unfortunate. I really feel that this guy had an opportunity to try and build on something, build his own legacy. We've all been wanting to see what he can do. Unfortunately, last week's Bears game wasn't the game we wanted to see from him. So, unfortunately, it's a situation that he's going to be held back one more year with circumstances that were beyond his control. And, I know a lot of people felt that, there's still a little immaturity there. There's still things that he was trying to develop on. But I do feel in the same situation, injuries can come at the worst time, especially when you're trying to prove yourself. And with Trey Lance, there's no question that he had talent. There's no question he was going to be able to come out and try and replicate something that was going to be special going forward. But I do feel, as kind of just maybe a bonus for the 49ers, they made the right choice with Jimmy Garoppolo. They didn't act quickly. They didn't move on him when they needed to. They took their time trying to find a deal where they felt would be suitable enough for his contract to be taken over and potentially find a suitor that would work both ways on both sides of the spectrum. But unfortunately, that just didn't come to fruition, and Garoppolo ended up having his contract restructured for a 1-year deal, most of the money guaranteed, and now we know why. So now Jimmy Garoppolo gets handed the keys back to the franchise. He'll handle business as that goes forward. And really, the 49ers were the better businessmen on this deal. So you have to consider the fact that Trey Lance will be missing the rest of the year. The Niners aren't out struggling trying to find a quarterback now. There's no need for that. There's no need to worry about that. There's no need to be any kind of inclement decision-making that would put them further back trying to sign a quarterback of less caliber or just struggling to find somebody that could make a difference. Jimmy Garoppolo's been there. He knows the system. It's a good situation. It's an unfortunate situation for Trey Lance, which unfortunately he's going to have a lot of growing pains going forward. He's going to have a long recovery process, but we wish him the best as he moves forward. Moving on to our next piece of news. This was probably the best game of the day. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't think that Miami was going to play that well. I felt that Baltimore had a pretty durable win here. I felt they were going to work for it, but I did feel that it was a situation Baltimore was going to come in as a favorite, potentially by about 2 touchdowns. But I really felt that coming into this game, that Miami could potentially cause Baltimore a little bit of trouble. Not too much, but a little bit. But as we saw, a phenomenal game, and I mean absolutely phenomenal, by Tua Tagovailoa, who just came out of the woodworks. Mike McDaniel is showing that he is an amazing offensive guru, that he can work with quarterbacks, and maybe this is a sign of things to come. Maybe Tua is going to grow into a more viable quarterback. And I know there's been continuous argument and the continuous criticism of his size, of his durability, of his arm strength. It all comes in waves at him. And the guy that I saw was a quarterback that came out and just wanted to compete and played until the clock hit zero. And it's amazing to me with the slew of talent that this guy came in with, and just how many people are counting the Dolphins out in the playoffs. And in retrospect, I feel the Dolphins could be a playoff team. I really do. They were one of my earlier picks to make a wild card. But the way this game unfolded, the way Miami fell behind, Baltimore looked like they were going to run away with this thing. 21 unanswered points. My apologies. 469 yards, 6 touchdowns. Forget the 2 interceptions. Tua just looked phenomenal. And I genuinely think you're going to continue to see growth there. I think Mike McDaniels is the best coach for Tua Tagovailoa at this moment. And I'll also say, in the defense of the Ravens, I felt Lamar Jackson had a great game as well. 3 touchdowns, 318 yards. He only missed 8 passes throughout the entire day. But unfortunately, it was just a monumental letdown if you're a Ravens fan. And I have to admit, I was shocked the way this game ended. I thought that basically Baltimore would wrap this thing up right around the third quarter. I thought this thing was done. Leave it to Miami to come out and play a historic game on a historic day to a Tagovailoa with 6 touchdown passes, tying the all-time franchise record with Dan Marino and Bob Greasy. So some elite company to be added into as they move forward there. And getting to a few more of our comments, our good buddy Bryce Pratt saying a Tua sandwich. And Lou Man, of course, bringing up, I don't know, I think the Patriots game was my favorite so far. I picked Miami, so no surprise for me, Waddle time in Miami. And yeah, Lou Man, I mean, the receivers that Miami has, you've felt that there is just a greater chance for Tua to have success. But I felt that it probably wasn't going to come until later in the season. I felt earlier they were going to struggle. I felt it was a situation of growth. Could he get the system down? Could Mike McDaniels and Tua basically connect on just that mentality? But just look at the stats from the receiving corps. With Waddle, he had 171 yards with 11 receptions. Tyreek Hill with 11 receptions as well, and 190 yards with 2 touchdowns, and Waddle 2 touchdowns as well. So you got to feel pretty good if you're Miami. Your quarterback came out and played probably one of his best games so far this season. It's still early, but that's a very telling tale. You've got to feel a little confident going forward. Now, if Baltimore, it's a different story. You can put points up, but unfortunately it was a situation you just didn't get to finish the job. And it seems like for the last couple of weeks, this has been a big problem for a lot of NFL teams, just not getting to be able to finish the job. Going forward, that a lot of teams have to try and find some way to make that work. Otherwise, it's just not going to be a good season for anybody. I mean, good case in point, the Cowboys and Bengals game. Once again, the Bengals struggled most of the game. The Cowboys had multiple chances to win the game, but unfortunately, the Bengals come back, try to get it to overtime, weren't able to do anything. The Cowboys capitalized with field position and got the late field goal. So the Bengals are now 0-2. And unfortunately, it's a situation where the Bengals, as a Super Bowl favorite, are already going to be critiqued and questioned as the season goes forward. But teams like Miami that come out and throw a huge, monumentous 21-point comeback, they're definitely going to be the talk of the town, at least come Monday morning. Speaking of monumental letdowns, it would just be irresponsible of me to not discuss what happened between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Indianapolis Colts. And I'll be honest, I know a lot of people were talking about that Jacksonville very well should have been favored in this game. Indy has not beaten Jacksonville on their turf since 2014, and it has been the ongoing story, especially when last year came around to try and lock up a playoff position, and it just didn't work out that way. Once again, it seems like the Indianapolis Colts are continuously snake bit when it comes to that situation. And I'm going to give props where props is deserved. Let's not just talk about the Colts letdown. And as big of a letdown as it is, I can't forget, all the work that was put in by the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I mean, you look at what the Jaguars did on offense, and it was just entirely impressive, no doubt in my mind. You look what Trevor Lawrence has done with Doug Peterson at his tutelage, 25 for 30, 235 yards, 2 touchdowns. Didn't even get sacked. Offensive line did their job. And with the receiver core, Kirk basically was the main guy, 6 receptions, 78 yards, 2 touchdowns. Ingram pulled in about 46. There was enough to basically push the ball around. It was enough to get the job done. And I'll give Jacksonville credit. They came out and they played a good game. Offensively, defensively, and special teams. Especially defensively. The Colts just look lost. And as the praises as I'm going to give Jacksonville, I do have to give, my 2 cents on the Colts situation as of now. All offseason long, we consistently heard the unending support of Matt Ryan throughout everybody. Everybody was throwing their hat in the ring for Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan was the guy. Matt Ryan's going to do this. Matt Ryan's going to win the division. Matt Ryan's going to get the Colts to the promised land. That's what we're going to hear about. Matt Ryan just looks like a mess. And I'm not shocked. And no one should be shocked for that matter. I knew what the Colts were getting. Just like with Carson Wentz. It's like buying a car. You have to know the history of the car, especially if it's pre-owned. Do your due diligence. Get the Carfax, so to say. And that's not a plug. I'm just saying, do your homework. And what I saw with Matt Ryan was what I knew was going to happen with Indy. Now, like I said, it's a young season. There's still a lot to go on. There's still a lot of things to happen that could happen or not happen. But let's just be serious for a minute. Matt Ryan is a pure pocket passer. And this is a league where it is ever-changing and developing into a dual-threat quarterback system. Let's just be honest. Not everybody's going to make it in the league as a pure pocket passer now. Matt Ryan was one of the very few. But let's also put this into consideration. While it seemed like a good situation, we still had to remember the Colts had not a lot of answers at wide receiver. There's a lot of question marks on the right tackle position, and it showed. This wasn't a surprise. I was generally one of the few people that felt the Colts' offensive line could have been a liability. And in retrospect, it showed. Consistency is the key here, and it didn't come up the Colts' way. And they're not going to be able to do it if Matt Ryan can't get on the same page with his players, if they can't protect him on the right side of the ball. And that's just all there is to it. Matt Ryan is what Matt Ryan is. He's an older quarterback. He's got a strong arm. But think of all the talent that he's had around him, even when he was in Atlanta. He had Roddy White. He had Julio Jones. He had Tony Gonzalez. He had Mohamed Sanu. He never did anything with him. Even in the year when they went to the Super Bowl. Blew a 28-3 lead. What more do I need to say? Every time the Colts are going to come out now, there's going to be that consistency of can they handle the job? Can the Colts get the job done? But I'll ask the bigger question. Have the Jaguars turned a corner? It certainly looks like it. This team looked dominant. I mean, this Jaguars team looked like the team that we saw back in 2017, where they were giving teams fits. Trevor Lawrence could be that guy. It's a little too soon to say, but I feel that the Doug Peterson-Trevor Lawrence marriage, it's off on the right foot. And everybody in the AFC South, I'm sure they're on notice right now. This is going to be a situation where everybody's going to say, Jacksonville, they might be that team you don't want to mess with. Now, there's a long way to go in the year, especially for Jacksonville, especially for the Colts. But we're going to find out what happens as we move forward. But the Colts right now, they have more questions than they have answers. And going forward, they need to start finding answers. And finally, we've got a football game, y'all. Tonight at 8:15 Eastern on Sunday Night Football, the Chicago Bears at the Green Bay Packers. I'm going to go to the Packers. I won't waste too much time on this, but I'd love to hear what you all think. I know it's going to be an all right game, but I don't. Let's be honest. Aaron Rodgers, I almost said Brett Favre for a minute. Aaron Rodgers has just dominated Chicago, and I think Justin Fields is going to be a very good quarterback. He just doesn't have the right pieces in front of him yet. I think there's still a long way to go with the Bears. I think even with what Aaron Rodgers has in front of him right now, I still feel confident enough to give Green Bay the win, and I'll give them a 2-point. I'll give them a 2-point differential. I will say 2 touchdowns right there. That's my take. I think Green Bay's got it. But if you got an opinion, go ahead, shoot up. I would love to hear what you got to say. And everybody's just blowing up the chat. Love it. Everybody's just throwing out some pretty good points right here, and I'll get to y'all in just a second. Lou Man saying Jacksonville, I'm happy for them. Our good buddy, Bradley Newberry. How's it going, man? Shout out to Duvall. They are definitely celebrating up there. I know Bradley's stoked, especially what they brought to the table. Jacksonville is handling their business. So, Lou Man, you were right. You picked a lot of ties. I mean, a lot of ties. Lou Man is dedicated to the tie. I'm not mad at him. Shout out to the boss man. Titan Upload, shouting out us the Power Hour. Love having him on the show. Did a really good job broadcasting the Giants and the Carolina game. So if y'all didn't get to check that out, make sure to check out his page. And, of course, he will be broadcasting the Titans and the Bills also on a live stream. So make sure you check that out tomorrow morning. If you got the time, boss man, I'll put that up. Make sure everybody gets pointed in the right direction. Everybody's excited that you're in the show, especially our buddy Bryce Pratt, giving a shout out to you. Jacksonville defense looked pretty good, and they did. I mean, I was shocked. I mean, the way they manhandled Matt Ryan, it was amazing. Just the consistency, you got to remember, there's a long way to go, but you got to like what you see as a Jacksonville fan. Bradley says Josh Allen with 2 sacks today. Yeah, that's a possibility. It says bear down, so I think Titan Upload will be going with the Bears on this one, so we'll make sure that we get that took care of. And, of course, if we can't ever figure the audio out, we'll give a live watch party together. We have been talking about this. It's just one of those things we're trying to get figured out, guys. I promise you, one of these days we'll get it figured out. We'll do a simulcast show together. So, unfortunately, technology does not want to cooperate in these situations. But, we'll try our best and get it working in the right direction. But before we get any further, let's take a quick 30-second break. Catch our breath because we've got a lot more to talk about. But when we get back, Titans Bills will break down all the little bits and all the little details that we need to know and get you ready for tonight's upcoming game. Promise we won't get this too long because I want to get you out there and watching football. I'm sure you don't want to watch me talking all night long, but that's your decision. I'm not mad at you. Well, all right, guys, we'll take a quick 30-second break. I'm Michael Bishop for the Power Hour, and we'll be right back in 30. What's on the Titan Upload Network? Why, some of the best live streaming interactive shows giving you Tennessee Titans and NFL highlights and information throughout the week. It's important to us to make sure that you have a great viewing experience and get all the Get down to the nearest computer with YouTube and find all the shows that you've been looking for.
The following includes Titans for Life, Titan Upload, The Power Hour, Titans Rossi, and Brian Johannes. Watch them today!
Exclusively on the Titan Upload Network. The Power Hour is on the air, live streaming you on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. I'm your host, Michael Bishop, and thank you for joining us on this Sunday evening. Had to get a show in tonight, guys, because we got a doubleheader tomorrow on Monday Night Football. Of course, for the Tennessee Titans at the Buffalo Bills and the Minnesota Vikings and the Philadelphia Eagles, which will be on 8:30 ABC. So I wanted to make sure I got a show in. Didn't want to interfere with those games. It's hard enough knowing when you got a game on Monday night and you have to try and get a show done in an hour. So believe me, I wasn't going to try and compete with two, especially with another game coming on at 7:15. That's where your attention needs to be. That's where I want you to be. Got the show in today. Happy about that. Happy everybody's in. Great crowd tonight. Love you guys. Love that you took the time to just hang out with me and just chat. A lot of great football tonight. And as I check our score while we're waiting, I definitely have to remember we had one game going in overtime. And as of right now, with 4:12 remaining, the Las Vegas Raiders and the Arizona Cardinals are still tied at 23. The Raiders have the ball at the Arizona 39. It's 2nd and 10, and they are driving. So if I get any more information on that, I'll definitely pass that along to you. Could we potentially see another tie? We'll wait and see. Still plenty of time to get the job done, but we will find out. And of course, I have to remember, shout out to all of you watching the show. It means a lot to me. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and TikTok at the Power 615. Sharing's caring also. Make sure you share it with all your friends, Titans fans, NFL friends. We don't matter. We cater to everybody. This is a show for everybody. Everyone's welcome. Getting a few quick comments before we jump into our Titans-Bills breakdown. Lou Mance says, I don't think he was happy in Chicago. Not sure what that was about, but work that out. Be nice. Hooper and Henry are keys on O. They must produce. Our DL must be disruptive without over-pursuing to help out Farley and keep Allen in check. And now that's going to be a big part of the discussion as we go forward tonight. I think that's some very key factors and really the biggest key factors. And of course, Lou Man. Sometimes teams find movers. I think Pittsburgh needs him at the right time. And I believe you're just talking about the quarterback situation they have right now. I mean, it's hard to say right now. I mean, if they feel Mitch Trubisky is going to move forward, we'll see what happens. And I think Lou Man just broke the story right there, and it looks like Arizona won this thing, and it is exactly what happened. So I believe what happened is a fumble was recovered by Arizona and run back for a touchdown. So as we see it, Arizona calls this game. Thank you, Lou Man, for the shout out and getting us that information. So good for Arizona. Pretty good for Tennessee, especially if they can handle business, but we'll see what happens. Bradley Newberry says, how can the O-line handle Von Miller? Really, it's just going to be just one-on-one matchups and potentially even double teams. I know Von Miller just had a lot of trouble last week getting started with the Rams, but you would definitely think with this extra week of preparation, basically they've had about 11 days to get ready for this game. So I would definitely think that it's going to be a situation they step up. They're going to be a little better prepared than what Tennessee is, but we'll break that down as we jump into it right now. And the big question is right now, Monday night at 7:15 Eastern on ESPN, the Tennessee Titans take on the Buffalo Bills. In this all-time series, the Titans have led it 30-19. The Titans are 2-0 in the last 2 years, including one of those games that fell on a Tuesday night. For the rare Tuesday night football game, was very, very memorable of that game and quite the dominating performance. Tennessee steamrolled over the Buffalo Bills. And, of course, last year where they made their heroic stop on the goal line, stopping Josh Allen short on a 4th and goal. So getting to this now, we know the Bills have been favored throughout most of the preseason, that this was going to be the team that a lot of guys are going to pick to win basically everything. And looking at who's up on deck where we have to be prepared, I think the 4 key components and the 4 players that we have to watch is following. You look at what Josh Allen's doing, and it's amazing just how he has progressed in his career. I've just never really seen a quarterback that's just come out of just such a smaller school and just dominated maybe on just a high level. I mean, you think of guys like maybe Tony Romo or maybe, Joe Flacco early in his career, where they came from smaller schools and they just dominated at their position. To me, I think that's a good example of what Josh Allen is. I think he's the guy that has basically the height. He has the arm strength. He can move. He's mobile. He's basically that quarterback that has all the tools you want to be successful. Not to mention the fact that Buffalo's been aggressive in free agent spendings in the last few years. They've gone and brought in guys that can help make a difference, especially at the wide receiver position. And while Allen's numbers aren't impressive right now, you have to feel that he has a lot of good football left in him, and they're not going to play their best football until like October or November. But being involved in that, Stephon Diggs is going to be a big part of that scenario. And here's the key here. Diggs can't do it all by himself, but we all know without any doubt or any hesitation, he's going to be Allen's go-to guy, regardless of any situation. I feel what Diggs brings to this table is the dynamic of just keeping defenses on their toes, especially in the secondary. Diggs just has that ability to make guys miss. He's a deep threat. He can get out there and just make people miss. And just the athleticism that he continues to show is just amazing. I still think he's still not played some of his best football yet. And the Tennessee secondary is going to have their hands full with him. Whether they decide Farley will cover, whether they decide that maybe this is a situation for McCreary to take over. We know Fulton won't be starting, which I'll get to that in a minute. But it's still, he's one of those guys that keeps coordinators on their toes. And we know Shane Bowen's going to have to come up with any kind of solution to slow him down and take away that option. And it's going to be a very daunting task because once Diggs gets going, he's kind of like just a train on a hill. He's going to keep rolling, and it's going to be hard to stop that momentum. But you look at the defensive side of the ball, and that gets interesting as well. And Tremaine Edmonds, to me, is the Bills' Swiss Army knife player. I think he's one of those guys that just doesn't get the recognition he deserves, but yet he's a Pro Bowl talent, in my opinion. Edmonds just continues to disrupt. He continues to get any kind of play he can and help the team. And that's really just the kind of guy he is. He's a team-first guy. He has that team-oriented mind. He can blitz, he can coverage, he can pick the ball off if he needs to. He can force fumbles. The guy is just a Swiss Army knife of a player, as I said. I really feel you can't overlook him because it's games like this I feel that he shines the best in high-pressure situations. I really liked the way he performed in the Chiefs game in the AFC Championship. I felt that he was a good key component guy there. I think he just got overshadowed by just a lot of other things that went on. Mainly, just the game got disrupted by a situation where overtime kind of just disrupted probably one of the best games we've seen. But, hey, what do I know? And getting to Al Pierce, did Gordon get called up? And Al, I believe he did. I believe he might be activated for this week. It's still kind of on the back burner. We know who won't be playing, but I will get to that momentarily with who will be out and who's doubtful, because I've tried to keep a sharp eye on that, especially knowing that this is going to be a situation where we could see multiple positions change throughout on the injury report. And of course, you got to bring up Von Miller. And don't take in consideration what Von Miller did on Thursday Night Football with the Rams. I don't. I think some guys are going to have a hard time getting started. Von's been in the league. He knows what's expected of him. He's an aged vet. He's a seasoned vet that's been to the Super Bowl, multiple Super Bowls, won multiple Super Bowls, and knows what his job is. So Von Miller is basically just going to get to the quarterback. And this is where our offensive line is going to be tested early and often. The key component is, are we going to man on man? Are we going to double team him? Are we going to just try and pull multiple schemes to probably just try and disrupt him? I think that's where you have to be creative, especially as the offensive line coach and as Todd Downing. I know I have to move the ball, And I know a guy like Von Miller can just disrupt the flow of things. And there's no question about that. The biggest question is, what is the best way to hold him back? And I think you have to do a multitude of things. I think you have to move guys around. I think you have to double team them. I think you have to sometimes give them that one-on-one matchup. Of course, the biggest question is our offensive line ready for this task? Well, they're going to have to be ready. And that's the unfortunate part of it. We all understand in these situations, it's always going to be the team that's well prepared and has the better game plan. And as of right now, the Buffalo Bills have the advantage with time. Now, of course, the Titans are one of the better advantages of preparing against better teams. And we hope that that can be the case. But that's a lot of big questions still to be answered. And I mean, if you all have some questions, I'm more than happy to throw an answer your way. So go ahead, just throw them in the chat and we'll throw a few more of them out. But while we do that, we'll get to the injury report, and that's the biggest thing here. And I think with Buffalo, you have to look at some of the key guys they're going to be missing. You'll have Ed Oliver, which more likely is officially out. Tim Settle is doubtful at this moment, but I still think could be out. There's a lot of questions with Johnson at cornerback, and Gabe Davis was actually updated to doubtful this morning. So he's no longer questionable, but doubtful. So now Buffalo's missing one of their key wide receivers. So now that's more pressure on Stephon Diggs. The consistency there is they know they're short on this position. They know that they're going to probably double up on Diggs, and they're probably going to double up on their other players. So Davis missing out on this lineup and Oliver is just a huge punch in the stomach for the Buffalo Bills. And Titan Pratt's got a good question, so shoot it at me, buddy, and I'll try and give you an answer. And, of course, on Tennessee's side, we look at what they're missing. Fulton, of course, was a big loss. Hillard is definitely a big loss right now, especially with how he contributed last week against the Giants. So now you basically have to take out that equation of 2 touchdowns. Fulton, it's really heartbreaking, especially with Fulton's situation. You get the sense it's like he can be that guy. But I hate the fact that he's now injured this early in the season, and it's probably going to be a situation that gets monitored closely. But it's starting to tell a telling tale of why we went out and got Roger McCreary. Do we feel confident enough that Fulton can play through the whole season? Can he help elevate himself and get just off this injury shake? And this happens with good players, and it's unfortunate. And I don't want Fulton to be a victim of that, because the biggest thing is in preparation and in all the things that you're trying to do to be successful, availability is the best thing you can have as a player. And if you're not there when they need you, that's a hard case to sell, especially for a starting job. It's consistency, and that's one thing that's hurting Fulton, and I hope that's something that he's going to be able to manage, especially throughout the season. If it's going to be an on and off thing, hopefully they get it figured out. Of course, DeMarco Jones will be out again this week too, and I know everybody's going to keep their eye on Kyle Phillips, especially with a neck injury, and this was kind of one that caught us on surprise. How bad is it? It's hard to say. Is it enough to where he can play with just some discomfort? Is it enough to where Vrabel thinks that they can play without him and try and just utilize some of their other skill set receivers? And I mean, that's the bigger question. And Titan Pratt brings up a good question here. How would they utilize Bobby Trees in order to do so? And Bryce, I mean, really, you have to think that they have to get Robert Woods involved early and often. And that was one problem I felt that they struggled with all week long when they played the Giants. And it was just the inconsistency of getting them the ball. And you felt that there were just opportunities they missed out on some of the routes, especially I was there watching the game. And it just seemed like sometimes he just had some space. Sometimes he was there on his own and the ball just didn't come his way. I can't really make any answer for why he didn't get the ball. It's just a situation of just trying to target him better. And I think that's one thing that Tannehill has to do a better job of on his part, is to get the ball to him and just get that building that relationship between player and player. So consistency is right there. And it's just one thing that we have to do in order to be successful. But now off to the injury report. And I come to my 3-point stance of what Tennessee needs to do to win this game. And we'll start out with one, and that's spread out the ball offensively. And I'm fine with getting other players involved. Jeffrey Swain, to me, getting involved in the offense, I don't have a problem with it. It's making positive yardage that matters in the end. If he can get a first down off a catch, I'm fine with that. If they want to pitch him the ball and let him run around and he gets a first down, I'm fine with that. Can he do it? That's debatable. But, I don't see him in practice every day, so I can't really make that assumption. I do feel that Tennessee needs to be creative here. Todd Downing knows that this is where his job is basically hanging by a thread. Guys have to show creativity on the offensive play calling sheet. And where Todd Downing has just fallen from time to time, it's just being creative and getting your guys involved. But not only that, give a consistent diet to Derrick Henry. He can handle the rock. There's no doubt we don't know that he can handle the rock. It's getting it to him early and often. It's getting your other wide receivers involved, like Bobby Trees, and getting Treylon Burks more involved, and getting your tight ends more involved. The whole reason we went out and got Hooper, and the whole reason we drafted Chigakongwo was to basically get ourselves back into a 2 tight end set, because Tannehill was more successful with tight ends than I think he is with deep threat wide receivers. And that's just the consistency thing. We have to remember they're still building a relationship here. So while it's important to spread the ball out and to get that one-on-one time that they need, especially out on the game field, and make sure what they've done on the practice field and transitioning to the game field is what works. So creativity is everything, and getting the ball out early and often to as many of your players available is important. If they make yardage, that's fine. Positive yardage is what they need. Get positive yardage, everything else will take care of itself. Tip 2, and this one was big for me, and it's play the full 60 minutes. Now, in the Giants game, I felt, at the end of the first quarter, they played a great first quarter. Even in the second half, even before the second half started, right at the end of the second quarter, right when halftime hit, I was a little antsy. And I'll be honest with you, there's a bunch of people in the stadium, and I was texting, and my good buddy Tyler from Titans Time Podcast, shout out to him, by the way, I just told him, I don't feel good about this, man. I don't like leaving them hanging around. That's just giving them more time to do whatever they have to do. And lo and behold, the Giants came out and they played probably the best 30 minutes of football that they needed to do in order to win the game. And that's what happened. And it's vital that when you play a game, you got to play your best 60 minutes. And Tennessee knows this. Mike Vrabel knows this. You can't play 59 good minutes of football and then in the last minute give the game away. It's consistency. All 3 phases of the ball, 60 minutes, get the job done. That's all you have to do. The consistency there is to play consistently good for 60 minutes. And it may sound like a cliche, but I'm being honest with you. You show me a team that plays good for 60 minutes, and I'll show you a team that'll beat you every time. And that's just one thing that I feel that Tennessee falls flat, especially when they play bad teams. I think one of the problems they have when they play bad teams, they don't play the full 60 minutes. And it was on full display last week. This is a different situation. We know what the Bills are. We know what they're capable of. It's a situation of a playoff caliber team playing another playoff caliber team. And shout out to Lou Man, because he did share all week when that game was going on that he didn't underestimate the Giants. And Lou Man, I didn't underestimate him. I just felt Tennessee just was supposed to go out there and outplay him. I just didn't feel they had the offensive caliber talent other than Saquon Barkley and maybe Tooney and maybe Galladay. And they just didn't have the quarterback play to do it. And unfortunately, that was just a situation that just didn't work out. And of course, 3, you got to bring this into play. And I know this is the biggest thing going forward, especially with a receiver core that is a lot better than the Giants. The secondary has got to step up to this task. And it's a punch in the stomach that Fulton won't be available. That we're already asking Caleb Farley to come out, who's basically had 1 year under his belt, but it was a short year. You're asking Roger McCreary to come out and basically be that guy, though he was basically first-round talent that fell into the early second round. This is where the secondary has to come in and make the job easier for this defense. And it's going to be a lot of questions, especially going forward, with what they're going to do, what's going to be continually the best option to try and get the run defense going. I'm not going to panic about the run defense. I do think there's still things to work out. I think, especially with Harold Landry not being in there, I think there's things they can do to try and make this work in the long term. But the secondary is always going to be the big question. And this is going to be their first big test. So we really need to know what this defense can do in the backfield. I want to see what these cornerbacks are capable of. It's time to put the big boy pants on. I mean, if we're going to try and compete with these kind of teams, then we're going to have to play our best football in the secondary. And Luman asks, was he hurt when we got him? And, I mean, if you're talking about Farley, Luman, I mean, it was the Bills game where he did get hurt. So this is kind of almost a redemption game for him. So it's going to be a lot to take in. It's going to be a fist fight throughout the entire game. But I do think it's going to be a very interesting game. So with those points in mind, let's go ahead and get to our predictions. I know everybody's got a prediction on here. We'll get to your predictions first, and then I'll give mine. So anybody that's got any prediction of the Titans Bills, go ahead and give it to me. I am all ears. Please feel free to give me whatever you want to say. Win, loss, we'll go from there. But I will say this, and I do think this is a key point. This is going to be a key point, especially for this game. I think Tennessee is going to have to play very, very close to the grain. And when I say that, they're going to have to basically make this a smash mouth game. We know Buffalo can't run the ball well, but they can throw well. We know their defensive front is a lot more talented. Even without Oliver on the line, Von Miller still on there can be disruptive. And Titan Pratt gives a 35-30 score, Titans. And I'll go ahead and put up my score. And I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, but it's a situation that I just feel that I think there's a lot to overcome. I think Buffalo has just come close to just being that team that gives Tennessee to get that Tennessee win, and they just haven't done it. Tennessee's been the thorn in their side. I think this is the year they figure it out. I think Buffalo has the defensive power to do it. I think Josh Allen's going to have a very good game. I feel 35-27. I think that's the final score there. And I know I'm going to get flack for it, but just hear me out. You know, I still feel there's a lot of questions Tennessee has to answer. And just because they lose this game doesn't mean the season's over. It just means they're going to have to go to the drawing board and they're going to have to refigure a few things. That's just part of the game, guys. Some teams just have bad months. If Tennessee's got to have a bad start to have a good finish, then I'm fine with that. I don't have a problem with losing a few games if it means they're building towards something bigger. You know, you got to remember, it's early in the season. It's September. We've already seen a slew of games where some teams have just lost where they're supposed to win. So, believe me, the NFL is ripe with parity. Just because that's happening, it doesn't mean that anything bad's going to happen. It doesn't mean this team's falling apart. It just means there's things they're going to have to do to get better. And health And some issues is one of these things where teams need that to be in their favor. And right now, I think Buffalo has that more in their favor than the Titans do. I think, especially if Todd Downing, if he doesn't open the playbook, that's really what's going to be the final end here. And I don't know why. I just feel it's just a gut feeling. Call me crazy. It's just one of those situations I feel Todd Downing is going to continue falling down a slippery slope. It just running plays that don't need to be run. And if that's what the case is, then if that means to the very end where we have to replace him, then so be it. And I'm not about firing people. I'm about putting people in place to succeed. And if there aren't people doing their jobs, you got to move on from them. That's just the sign of a good team understanding what's wrong and how to fix it. Well, all right, guys. I do apologize. It looks like Chris is running behind. I'm still trying to get a hold of him. Hopefully we can get him on before the show ends. We've got a few more minutes left, but I definitely got one more segment in my back pocket. So we'll take a quick 30-second break, and when we come back, there's a lot of coaching jobs that are going to be open at the end of the year, and I think one of the biggest jobs right now is going to be finding the right fit in the right situation. So who are the best coaches out there that could be potential hot bait, so to say, for the next coaching carousel as it starts up? So we'll join you back in 30 seconds. I'm Michael Bishop with the Power Hour, and we'll be back in 30. The Power Hour is on the air, live streaming on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. I'm your host, Michael Bishop, and thank you for joining us on this Sunday evening. We'll get you to Sunday Night Football as soon as we can. Now we got a pretty good matchup with the Packers and the Bears, so don't want to waste any more time than I have to. But we'll try and get Chris on if he gets on any minute. But unfortunately, it looks like we might not get him on before then. So unfortunately, we'll just get him on another time if that's what has to happen. But before we go, I definitely wanted to get in one segment before we left, and it's a very interesting one because every year the coaching carousel starts out with a lot of high-profile guys and who's going to be the next head coach in the NFL. So I've kind of kept this one in my back pocket for a little bit. So let's just go ahead and throw it out there and get going. So here's my take on who the next NFL head coaches will be going forward in the next 2023 year. So my first honorable mention is going to be Brian Flores. And I'm just going to be honest, he'll be with the Steelers for this year. I think there's a lot of teams that might be just kind of just scared off, especially with the legal situation. But let's just remember, Brian Flores, I think, is a good culture builder. I think he's in a good situation to make guys successful if he's put in the right position. So with Flores, I kind of like what he has to put out there. I kind of feel it's a situation where you just like his energy, you like what he's building. And really, with this Miami team, it's got his fingerprints all over it. So it wouldn't shock me if somebody hired him next year. I mean, there's a lot of teams that need a culture change. Brian Flores is a good culture coach, and I think he's somebody you want to pick up the phone and give a ring. So number 5, I'll have to go with Kellen Moore. And I know it's going to be a tall order, especially not having Dak Prescott as your quarterback this year. But they already came off a big win over the Cincinnati Bengals, with a quarterback that basically just kind of fell in their lap. So Kellen Moore did a good job with his play calling abilities. I think he's a good fit for any team that wants to get offensively involved, and especially as a young quarterback. So Kellen Moore is definitely an intriguing prospect. I think he's definitely going to be one of the hotter commodities, especially for teams that are going to be drafting high, potentially bringing in a new quarterback in the draft. And there's a lot of talented young quarterbacks out there. So I have no doubt that he's going to be getting a lot of phone calls and a lot of attention once January roll around. And number 4, I've got to add Thomas Brown, and just another disciple of the Sean McVay tree. And Brown's definitely switched positions as coaching. He's been the assistant head coach for a couple of years now. So I really don't think he's going to be there much longer. Sean McVay guys typically get a lot of attention, and we've already seen a slew of coaches leave his tree and show early success. Minnesota followed suit. I mean, at this point, you really felt you see what Zach Thomas has done. And I think you have to take that in consideration. It's just Sean McVay knows how to get his guys prepared to go out there and to be just top caliber coaches. And I think he's going to be really, really good when he gets the opportunity. And number 3, Brian Leftwich. I feel he was going to be the guy that took over the Jacksonville job until they went with Doug Peterson, which I get. I mean, Peterson has won a Super Bowl. He's got a pedigree of just building quarterbacks. But Leftwich, to me, I have seen just what he's done in the time that he's been with the Buccaneers. I get why they went with Todd Bowles. It's very interesting in those situations where you want a guy that's going to be prepared. And Leftwich just has that just attitude where he can come in a room. He just commands the respect of his players. And guys love playing with him. I mean, really, he's just that coach that guys want to play hard for, and they want to play at their best ability. So I don't see Brian Leftwich being in Tampa Bay any longer. I think this year is going to be one of those situations. He's going to get a few phone calls. Moving on to our number 2 guy, and it's Ken Dorsey with Buffalo. And this shouldn't be a shock to anybody. Ken Dorsey was going to go with Brian Daboll to the Giants if the Buffalo Bills decided not to retain him. And that wasn't the case. And I feel the Bills are going to have a very strong year offensively, and that's all that he's going to need to move up. Ken Dorsey's one of those younger coaches that's moved up the ranks. He's been successful wherever he's been, and I think a lot of guys are just going to really just latch onto his personality. Ken Dorsey's been a winner just about everywhere he's been, and that starts from just his time at playing in Miami. He understands what it takes to be in a winning culture. He understands what it means to build a winning culture. And with Buffalo, he's risen above the ranks. He's been consistent. He is now the offensive coordinator, and I think he's going to be a one-and-done offensive coordinator. So any team with a quarterback that needs redeveloping, or even a young quarterback being drafted to a bad team, Ken Dorsey might be your guy. And guys, it shouldn't be a shock to anybody, but the number 1 coordinator to get a head coaching job is Eric Bieniemy. And no shock. It's just driven me crazy over the last few years to see that Bieniemy has just consistently been overlooked for whatever reason, for whether it be just he doesn't interview well, whether teams just use him just as the Rooney Rule card, which is just stupid in that opinion, because Bieniemy is definitely ready to move up to that next level. I want to see him at that top level of head coach. He's ready. There's no doubt in my mind. There should be no doubt in anyone's mind. Let's be real. Patrick Mahomes and Bieniemy have been a great fit together since Mahomes had been drafted to the Chiefs. And I feel he has that knowledge. I feel he has that personality. Maybe he's a little more down to earth. Maybe he's a little more humble. But it's time to give the man his shot. There's plenty of teams out there that would just kill to kind of have that consistency, that would kill to just have that kind of guy that can develop players into star athletes. And I think he's a big part of why Patrick Mahomes is successful at the next level. So I'm just tired of just the entire situation that it is. I think it's time to give Bieniemy his due. There's plenty of teams that are going to be out there next year that are looking for a capable head coach. Give the man a shot. I mean, at some point, everybody deserves a shot, and he's put in his time, and I'm more than happy to see him get his due. And Lou, man, I don't think he did anything as far as I know. I just think it's a situation where, some people just don't feel he's the right fit. Some people just didn't think it was the right interview. It's hard to say. I don't want to speculate on that, but at the same time, as many years as openings have come up and you figured that he would be a better fit for a certain job than other coaches get, it's hard to say. But I think that this should be his year. I think this is the time to finally just let him get his chance. All right, guys, I appreciate you all for joining me tonight. Thank you for watching the show. I know it was a crazy time and a crazy day to do this, but like I said, we had a doubleheader coming up on Monday night, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to try and compete with that, so I was going to keep it simple and made sure that everybody had a chance to watch the show. A lot of fresh information, everything. My apologies for Chris not getting in on time. Unfortunately, he was just held up on traffic, and it's just one of those situations we couldn't handle. But we'll get him on at a later date, so my apologies for that. We will get him in on the show. Love having him on. Just unfortunately, it was one of those days. Just things just didn't fall that way. It happens, so no big deal. We'll get him on. But thank you all for watching the show. Round of applause for you guys. You're always a great audience. You always come, bring great questions, bring great comments. I keep doing this because of you. You bring in all that great stuff, and I love giving back to you. Believe me, you're one of the best audiences out there. I love you all, and I love all that you do for the show and support us as we go forward. And don't forget, guys, if you love the show, help it grow. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and TikTok at the Power Hour 615. And don't forget, we're doing daily TikToks every day, so make sure you check out those. We want to get all the good stuff out for you, so it's important to us. So make sure you check all that out. And don't forget, as of always, we are a member of the Titan Upload Network. So don't forget to follow us on all our social media platforms, which aims at Titans for Life, Brian Johannes' Draft Analysis, Titans Rossi, and of course, our founder, Titan Upload. Check him out. Always putting out good stuff. And make sure you check out his live feed tomorrow. He will be doing a live watch party with the Tennessee Titans and the Buffalo Bills. Check that out. Make sure he will get you time for that on his website. Check us all out and follow us on all our social media platforms. But once again, everybody, thank you again for watching us tonight. It means so much that you continue to support and watch the show, and we're going to continue to do our best and make sure that we're putting out good content for you every time. So, I'm Michael Bishop with the Power Hour. Take care. Tighten up. Thank you for watching this live presentation of the Titan Upload Network.